as if no matter how hard you try to change, you keep getting pulled back into the same mistakes, the same painful patterns, the same cycles of frustration. Maybe it's that inner voice that convinces you to quit right when you're close to something meaningful, or an unexpected burst of anger over something small leaving you wondering, why did I react like that? Maybe it's the quiet envy you try to deny, but feel deep down when someone else achieves something you secretly desire. Or the paralyzing fear of failure that keeps you stuck in excuses and endless procrastination. What you may not realize is none of this is random. There's a force within you, operating beneath the surface, shaping your thoughts, emotions, and decisions. A force you've likely spent your whole life avoiding, but it's been influencing you all along. Carl Jung called this hidden force the shadow, the buried part of your psyche where you've locked away the traits you didn't want to face: shame, fear, jealousy, insecurity, rage, everything you were taught to suppress in order to be accepted by the world. But here's the problem: what you reject doesn't disappear. It only grows stronger in the dark. The shadow doesn't stay quiet. It shows up when you lash out and don't know why. When you push away those you love and wonder why you're always alone. When you harshly judge others, not realizing you're projecting your own fears onto them. When you sabotage your dreams and convince yourself you were never good enough to try. Jung warned us, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. If you don't face your shadow, it will keep pulling the strings from behind the scenes. And you'll continue to believe life is just unfair. But there's another path. If you find the courage to turn inward to confront what you've long denied, the shadow can be transformed, not into something to fear, but into a source of profound strength, creativity, and personal freedom. And that's what we'll explore in this video, because this journey won't be easy. But if you're truly ready to break the cycle of self-sabotage and reclaim your life, this is where it begins. What happened to your sadness? Your frustration? Your desire to stand up for yourself, to speak, to feel, to want? They didn't disappear. They were buried, pushed deep into the unconscious because they didn't fit the image of who you were told you should be. Over time, these repressed emotions, impulses, and instincts formed what Carl Jung called the shadow, the hidden part of your personality containing everything you had to deny in order to be accepted by others. And make no mistake, the shadow is not just some abstract psychological theory. It's real. It's alive within you now, quietly shaping your thoughts, reactions, and behavior from behind the scenes. You feel it when you're unsettled by someone who's confident and outspoken because deep down, you've buried your own voice. You see it when you harshly criticize others for seeking attention, not realizing that you too want to be seen, but have been taught that it's selfish. You feel it in envy, not because others have something you don't, but because you've been conditioned to suppress your own ambition. And so you walk through life like an iceberg with only a small part of your true self visible. The rest, submerged in silence, remains unseen, even to you. But ignoring the shadow doesn't make it go away. In fact, the more you deny it, the more control it gains. It shows up in your fears, in your emotional outbursts, in the mistakes you keep repeating, in the toxic patterns you swear you'll escape but don't. So the real question isn't, do I have a shadow? The real question is, how much of my life is being controlled by it, without me even realizing? And how exactly does this hidden part of you manipulate your reality? It doesn't scream. It doesn't show up in obvious ways. It whispers, it hides. It guides from the dark, shaping your emotions, choices, and perceptions without your awareness. One of the most common ways it does this is through projection. Have you ever felt intense dislike for someone, for no clear reason? Have you ever judged someone harshly only to later realize they were expressing a part of you that you've rejected? For example, someone raised to believe that ambition is selfish may feel contempt for driven people. Someone afraid of their own assertiveness might criticize those who are bold. Rather than recognize these disowned traits in ourselves, we project them outward and attack them in others. The shadow also operates through self-sabotage. It's why you procrastinate at the worst moments. Why you give up just as things are starting to work. Why you make poor decisions again and again even when you know better. Because deep inside, there may be a belief that you don't deserve success, or that change is dangerous, or that happiness will make you vulnerable. The shadow becomes an invisible prison guard keeping you inside the walls of your comfort zone, even if that zone is built on your pain. And it doesn't end there. Your shadow shows up in your relationships too. Have you noticed patterns always ending up with people who hurt you? Always attracting the same kind of toxicity that's no accident. Without realizing it, you are drawn to people and situations that reflect the unhealed parts of your psyche. If your shadow holds wounds of rejection, you may be drawn to those who continue that cycle. If your shadow is built on insecurity, you may connect with those who make sure you keep doubting your worth. And worst of all, if left unexamined, your shadow can completely take over your identity. Without realizing it, you start to believe that this is just who I am. You tell yourself that your anxiety, self-doubt, or constant frustration is simply your personality, that you're just unlucky, that you've never been good enough. But the truth is far more subtle and more powerful. You're not living as your true self. You're living under the influence of a hidden force within you, the shadow, a collection of repressed emotions, memories, and beliefs that you've unconsciously carried for years. If the shadow has this much control over your life, the question becomes, how do you know when it's running the show? How can you recognize the signs that it's not you making the choices but your unhealed past? In this next part, we'll uncover the clear, undeniable signs that the shadow is manipulating your life, and once you see them, you won't be able to unsee them. If your life feels like it's stuck in the same repetitive cycles. If you're constantly anxious, frustrated, or unable to break certain patterns, it's possible that your shadow is in control. But how do you know for sure? Let's explore the most common signs. You project onto others. One of the clearest indicators of the shadow is projection, seeing in others what you reject in yourself. Ever feel intense irritation towards someone for no clear reason? Does confidence in others bother you? Does assertiveness feel threatening? These reactions often say more about you than them. A person who's been taught to repress their own need for recognition may feel disgusted by people who freely express themselves. Someone uncomfortable with their own anger may judge assertive people as aggressive or rude. As long as you don't realize that this discomfort is coming from within, you'll keep blaming others, never healing the root of the reaction. You constantly self-sabotage. Have you ever been right on the edge of success and then watched everything fall apart? Maybe you procrastinated at the worst possible moment. Maybe you made a poor decision that derailed your progress. Or maybe you just gave up. This is not just bad luck. It's the shadow at work, quietly pulling you back to what's familiar. If, at some point in your life, you internalize the belief that you don't deserve success, love, or peace, that belief will remain buried but active, quietly shaping your behavior so that you never move beyond your old limits. This is why people often fail just before they break through. The shadow doesn't fear failure, it fears change. So you're attracted to the same toxic people. Do you keep ending up in relationships that feel familiar, painful, and destructive? Always drawn to people who ignore you, devalue you, use you. It's not just bad choices, it's a pattern, one that your unconscious keeps repeating. If you experienced rejection early in life, your shadow may unconsciously seek out people who mirror that wound. If you were taught to suppress your anger, you may be drawn to those who provoke it so that it can be expressed indirectly. It's not intentional. It's not your fault, but it is your responsibility to become aware of it. Because otherwise, the cycle will continue. By now, you know the shadow is within you whether you like it or not. You can keep pretending your fears, insecurities, and self-sabotaging impulses don't exist. You can keep blaming the world, your past, or your circumstances, or you can choose what most people never do. To look within, to face the truth, to reclaim your mind. But before we go further, there's something important to understand. Most people will never do this work. They'll live on autopilot, repeating the same mistakes, trapped in the same relationships, feeding the same pain. They'll cling to old stories, blaming fate, society, or everyone else for their unhappiness. They'll avoid their shadow at all costs and pay the price with lives of frustration and quiet suffering. But you don't have to. If you've made it this far, if you've stayed with this message through the discomfort, it means something inside you knows you're ready for more. You're tired of being a prisoner of unconscious forces. You're done letting fear, shame, and old beliefs define who you are. You want to step into your real power, and to do that, you must face your shadow. But let me be honest. This path isn't easy. It asks you to let go of the illusion that you fully understand yourself. It asks you to revisit the wounds, the mistakes, the truths you've buried. It asks you to take full responsibility not for what's happened to you, but for how you move forward. And that's where real freedom begins. And so the question is not, can you do this? It's, will you? Will you let this knowledge change you, or will you take it in and move on, unchanged? If something in this message struck a chord, if you've recognized parts of yourself you've been avoiding, share it. Say it. Speak it out loud or write it in the comments. Because naming your shadow is already a step toward healing it. And whatever you do, don't stop here. The next step in this journey will take you even deeper into parts of your mind most people never dare to explore. If you truly want transformation, you cannot afford to look away. This knowledge may be the key you've been missing to reclaim your life and become who you were always meant to be.